Ladies and gentlemen, today we have some absolutely massive breaking news. You see, just moments ago, President Trump scored one of the biggest legal victories of all time, and no, I'm not joking. Just earlier this morning, a New York City appeals court has just thrown out the massive $500 million judgment passed by New York State Attorney General Letitia James all the way back in 2022, related to her fraud case against President Trump. Now, of course, as we now know, this fraud case was nothing more than a highly partisan political hit job, which means that because of today's news, all of the far-left radical progressives are absolutely losing their minds. And so, folks, before we really dive into today's news, take a look at this, then we're going to have a lot to talk about. Let it play.
A New York appeals court just this morning has thrown out President Donald Trump's massive civil fraud penalty. The decision from a five-panel group in New York's appellate division changed the original decision that stood to cost Trump over $500 million. One appeals judge calling the lower court's penalty an excessive fine that violates the Eighth Amendment of the United States Constitution.
And so, ladies and gentlemen, let's really break all of this down. In this fraud case against President Trump, Letitia James tried to argue that President Trump was deliberately inflating his net worth by saying that all of his properties around the world are worth more than they actually are. However, as it turned out, all of President Trump's properties really are just worth a lot of money. And so this appeals court, packed with mostly left-leaning New York City judges, by the way, just determined that Letitia James' $500 million judgment against President Trump is actually in direct violation of the Eighth Amendment's prohibition against excessive criminal penalties. And I think we can all agree that $500 million is just a little bit excessive, to say the least. But so really, what today's ruling does is highlight the degree to which our legal system had been weaponized against conservative Americans, and now what we're witnessing is the complete and total unraveling of the progressive left's corrupt grip on our legal system. And I'll tell you what, here's the truth. With this judgment overturned, it's not just a massive victory for President Trump. I mean, it is, but it's also a massive victory for all of us conservative Americans that have had to live under the oppressive leadership of the progressive left. We also should comment on the unconstitutionality of Letitia James' $500 million penalty as determined by this appeals court. Really, this should come as a surprise to absolutely no one because, as we all know, there's nothing that progressives love more than violating the U.S. Constitution. In fact, if it were up to people like Letitia James, I'm sure they'd just rip up the entire Constitution and use it as toilet paper if they could. That's how little respect they have for this country. But also, check this out. You see, the timing of this appellate court ruling couldn't actually be any worse for Letitia James because as things currently stand, she's actually under not one but two federal investigations. Right now, the Department of Justice is investigating her for potentially violating the Civil Rights Act during her illegitimate fraud probe into President Trump, and the FBI is also looking into her for mortgage fraud and tax evasion. And so now I want to break all of that down with you guys, but first I do want to say real quick that if you guys enjoy the daily news updates, please consider subscribing to the channel because it really does help a ton. But okay, check this out.
Two well-placed sources familiar with the probe tell Fox News that New York Attorney General Letitia James and her office is under investigation by the DOJ here in Washington. We're told that Attorney General Pam Bondi signed off on the probe. Subpoenas were sent to James's office, and there is a grand jury investigation underway in the New York State Capitol of Albany. The specific investigation, my colleague Jake Gibson, Ashley Oliver, and myself are being told involves deprivation of rights, which in plain language means someone in a position of legal authority violating someone else's constitutional or legal rights. Those sources tell Fox News the DOJ is going after James because she took then former President Donald Trump to court, quote, simply because she didn't like him and campaigned on getting him.
And so, folks, all of that is 100% true. As I'm sure all of you know, back in 2018, when Letitia James campaigned to become New York State's Attorney General, perhaps her single biggest campaign promise was to criminally pursue President Trump, openly vowing to file lawsuit after lawsuit to bring him down. And so here's the almost hilarious reality. Letitia James wasn't even smart enough to hide her plans to weaponize the justice system. She was open about it, thinking that she would never have to face accountability. But now, with both the DOJ and the FBI knocking on her door, it seems as if our good friend accountability is pretty much standing on her doorstep. Still, though, to this very day, Letitia James is claiming that all of the allegations against her very obvious criminal behavior are both baseless and discredited. In fact, take a look at this clip from just a couple weeks ago, and by the way, I think you guys are going to like this one. Let it play.
My question is for Tush James. Will you apologize to President Trump for wasting millions of dollars and the state of New York for a witch trial? And how does it feel to know that you will be in prison for mortgage fraud?
Thank you for coming. We want to thank him for coming. We respect all opinions. Everybody knows those allegations are baseless. They're discredited. And so we want to thank him.
Folks, here's the truth. She knows that she is absolutely screwed, and so really all she can do is try to keep on lying. And so, ladies and gentlemen, here's really the big takeaway here. Right now, all of these far-left radical progressives like Letitia James are having their entire corrupt world completely flipped upside down. Their days of weaponizing the legal system are done, their illegal alien voters are getting deported, their racially gerrymandered voting districts are being redrawn, but perhaps most importantly, the American people have had enough of all of their anti-American antics. They knew that the Biden era was pretty much going to be their last opportunity, their last chance to establish complete and total permanent control of the country. And so, as you might have noticed, they did everything they could possibly do to shut down all of us, actual Americans. However, much to their dismay, we didn't just roll over and take it. We all fought back and survived 4 years of hell, and now we're cleaning up all of the messes that they made and reversing all of the damage that they caused. And so, yes, of course, that involves locking down the border and carrying out mass deportations and having an America First foreign policy, but it also involves carrying out a national vibe shift where we all get together and send the message, hey, the weaponization of the justice system has come to an end. And so, ladies and gentlemen, I'll tell you what, finally, all of us American patriots are back in control of the nation, and as I like to say, this is what it looks like to put America first.